mode of writing is poetry, and unlike a number of contemporary, unlike most contemporary poets, I use form. I'm really interested in rhythm and meter and rhyme schemes and patterns, and I write sonnets and villanelles. So I'm writing in a kind of rhythm. And I think most pipe smokers would say that when you're in the right place with a really good pipe and you're in the zone, there's a kind of rhythm in the pipe smoking too. So I have that. Now, C.S. Lewis smoked when he wrote, but he had another rhythm going on because, C.S. Lewis wrote with a pen, but by the time Lewis was flourishing as a writer, there were perfectly good fountain pens available. Indeed, an essayist from the generation before Lewis, Hilaire Belloc, has a fantastic essay called On the Pleasure of Taking Up One's Pen.
Yes.
Which is all about writing with a Waterman fountain pen. But interestingly, right to the end of his life, Lewis insisted on using dip pens. So he had an inkwell in front of him, and he had a pen that was just the nib and a stalk. And obviously, every sentence or two, you had to dip it back in and renew the ink. And Lewis maintained that he could think and sustain a thought for as long as the dip pen wrote. And in the very act of lifting the pen from the paper, dipping it in the inkwell and returning it to the paper, he had conceived and brought forth in his mind the next sentence.
Yeah.
So there was that thing. And I certainly find that with pipe smoking, when I'm writing, I quite often have to renew the pipe or light it or clean it or whatever. And that those little gaps where I take my hand from the pen and lay it down and attend to the pipe, whilst I'm physically occupied with the front, the top part of my mind is doing that. And it's therefore pacified. Its attention is given there. And I think the best writing comes when the writer's conscious attention is removed somewhere else, and the deeper stuff that comes from the unconscious or from the soul or the spirit, or those places in which the heart finally is able to move up into the head, that can happen when your eyes are elsewhere. So I sometimes find that after having tamped or relit or refilled my pipe, I return to the page and I've got something. Yeah. I wasn't consciously thinking while I did the pipe about what the next thing was, but miraculously, when I return with the lit pipe and the pen in hand, it flows.
Well, what you're describing to me reminds me a lot of the American writer Shelby Foote, who has written, in my opinion, the greatest work on the American Civil War that's ever been produced. And he wrote with a dip pen. He composed 3 volumes of history over the course of 20 years using a dip pen. And he was, as you say, an inveterate pipe smoker, to borrow from the beginning sentence of your recent essay. And he often had people to ask him why he did not use a typewriter. He said, well, it's kind of akin to General Lee or General Jackson. They were often asked why they did not use the repeating rifle in the Confederate Army. And they didn't want to use the repeating rifle. He said they wanted to use a single shot rifle because it taught the soldier the value of the individual shot. And the same